Welcome to Shaq's house. Shaq's house. That's our Shaq. You're now in Shaq's house. Welcome to Shaq's house.
Hey, what's up, Shaq Housers? How y'all doing? Sorry I've kept you waiting for a very long time now. Shaq House apologizes to all you viewers out there. But it's taken me a minute to compile this video together, and finally, I'm just happy to share it with you now. Basically, we'll be going through Kang the Conqueror, the villain of the latest Ant-Man installment, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Check out the links in the link I have in the comments below for my review of it, which I will not be giving any spoilers within or during this video at all either, so you ain't got to worry about that. But I will say this though, the fact that Kang is now the big bad villain of the MCU, it inspired me to do this. I watched all the other videos out there, Blurred Without Fear, I love you, Comics Explain, I love y'all, but this video, it's gonna be the only Kang the Conqueror explanation video you see. We're gonna go through all of his identities, who he began as and who he ended as, from Nathaniel Richards to Immortus. Check it out.
Girl, I'm going to see the Kangs. Get all my shit done. I'm going to see the Kangs. Not the Kings, the Kangs. Well, goddamn, I got news for you. The Kangs is here.
The man most famously known as Kang the Conqueror had his beginnings in the reality of Earth 6311, a divergent timeline also known as Other Earth. The Nexus event, the point of divergence for this reality, was due to the fact that the Dark Ages never occurred, but instead experienced an unprecedented growth in science and innovation throughout the period normally recognized as 300 through 1300 AD. As a result, the people of this other Earth were able to land on the moon as early as the 9th century, and they restarted their calendar from that point onwards in commemoration of that accomplishment. Meanwhile, on Earth 616, wealthy physicist Nathaniel Richards, the father of Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, created the first time travel platform of the 20th century, intending to use it to travel to the future of his reality. However, a miscalculation caused him to travel sideways instead of going forward through dimensions, landing him in Other Earth. At that point, civil war eventually erupted on Other Earth, and the establishment of a lunar colony and more war left this Earth a desolate wasteland by the time Nathaniel arrived there. Nathaniel decided to take up residence on Other Earth, using his science, technology, and knowledge to help rebuild that world, becoming known as both the Warlord, erroneously, and the Benefactor, more correctly. There have been retcons that why he landed on Other Earth, but we're not going to get into that for this. Centuries after Nathaniel Richards arrived in that reality, a descendant of his of the same name, Nathaniel Richards II, was born. Now, Nathaniel II lived during the 31st century, but its idyllic nature, its peaceful, no crime, nothing bad happening. Think of it like Demolition Man. Think of it like that reality. It weighed heavily in Nathaniel's mind as he grew older. Now, genius runs in his family, as he's a Richards, but he suffered for it. Being attacked by bullies during his teenage years left him hospitalized for a year, and it tarnished his view on human nature forever. And the unchallenged peace and prosperity of his era bored Nathaniel. He craved the adventure he viewed in the holographic tapes archiving the heroic era of the 616 20th century. Due to the divergence between Earth 616 and Other Earth, these tapes had to have been brought sideways from Earth 616 by Nathaniel Richards or others. Upon reaching adulthood, Nathaniel grew desperate for stimulation and journeyed to the preserved citadel of his ancestor, hoping to find something of interest in the archived records. And boy did he. What he discovered were the remains of the time machine belonging to his ancestor, archived away and forgotten. With the parts of the time machine he found, combined with a set of blueprints, Nathaniel was able to re-engineer a working time machine from the equipment. After years of rebuilding it, Nathaniel decided to travel to various eras and loot them. Prior to his departure, he encountered a time-traveling variant of the Fantastic Four in a predestination event, but he has no memory of that encounter. Nathaniel's first voyage brought him back to Earth 616 to 2950 BC. A time storm caused his machine to land there, and he materialized in ancient Egypt, however, damaging the time machine's mechanisms. Also, it should be noted that he constructed a great idol around his time machine when he was constructing it. And when he arrived in ancient Egypt, it played on the local people's superstitions. And so, that's how the legend of the Sphinx was born. Worse than his time machine being damaged, Nathaniel was thrown free of his Sphinx as it landed, crashing in a small pod from the ship out in the shifting desert sands. He only survived thanks to the benevolence of a man named Baal and the people of the sands. Blind and injured from the impact, Nathaniel was brought back to their camp for nursing and for care. It was Baal who named him Rama-Tut, meaning visitor from beyond the sun. When he was well enough, Rama-Tut fled the people of the sands and made his way to the City of Kings. Although still blind, his ultra-diode ray gun and displays of 31st century power and technology cowed the populace into serving him. Using local herbs that had been irradiated by his arrival, Rama-Tut recreated an optic nerve restorative known to the medicine of his time. And with his sight returned and his seat of power reclaimed to the Sphinx, Rama-Tut conquered the Egyptians with ease. The superstitions and fearful believed him to be a living god, so they cast aside the old royal family and giving him the throne. From then on, he was known as the Pharaoh Rama-Tut. Now, the reign of the Pharaoh Rama-Tut is forgotten in the annals of time, and so reports of his rule, they vary in length. Still, by the end of his rule, Rama-Tut had become arrogant in his self-proclaimed godhood. Nathaniel Richards' power went to his head, and this is the result of it, or at least the beginning of it. Now, Rama-Tut, he was forced to flee his throne after a battle against a young En-Sabah-Nur, a boy that he was looking to enslave. Now, for you X-Men fans out there, y'all know that En-Sabah-Nur, he becomes the mutant known as Apocalypse later on. A time-traveling Fantastic Four and Doctor Strange's astral form also caused him to abandon his throne. He entered the hidden chambers in his Sphinx ship, having long ago fixed the damaged time travel components, and he reluctantly abandoned his kingdom. He launched his time ship pod from inside the Sphinx's shell and re-entered the time stream. Landing at Earth 616, a chance encounter with Dr. Doom led to a reinvention. Rama-Tut related his story to Dr. Doom and the discovery of his ancestors' time machine. He speculated that the time machine may have been Doom's creation, thereby making them related. Rama-Tut even went so far as to suggest that he and Doom were the same man at different points in their timeline, which was false information he was feeding him. Remaining in the 616 reality at the dawn of the heroic age, Nathaniel decided to craft a new identity for himself, the Scarlet Centurion, and wanted to manipulate the heroes of this time for his own ends. Through a combination of his own time travel technology and super advanced hypnotic aids, the Scarlet Centurion devised a costume that allowed him to subtly influence the behavior of others. Manipulating events to cause the Avengers to travel back to the year 1945 created a divergence, the reality of Earth 689. The Centurion manipulated that world's Avengers to imprison all other superhumans in that reality. The Centurion then summoned the 616 Avengers to defeat that of Earth 689's. But the Avengers of 616, they beat him and then banished him into the time stream. This banishment diverged the Scarlet Centurion into two beings. One variant, he traveled to Earth 712 and became that future's ruler. And this is the same reality from which the Squadron Supreme come from. The other Scarlet Centurion, he resolved to head back to the 31st century of Earth 6311. He figured, I've had enough of this villainy. I'm going to head home now and just live out the rest of my days in my own home timeline. However, a time storm caused Nathaniel to overshoot his mark and land in the 40th century of that reality. In this future, planetary warfare reduced Earth to near barbarism between the surviving feudal factions. And though there were vast technological advancements that had been achieved, the population was so barbaric that they no longer knew how to use them. Seeing opportunity among these ruins, Nathaniel found a vault filled with technological marvels and locked himself away with them. Inspired by his meeting with Dr. Doom, Nathaniel retrofitted a biohelmet and time suit of his own design with new and advanced technology to protect him from attackers and summon forth weapons and devices with a flick of his finger. With this success, he crafted a new identity for himself, Kang the Conqueror. As Kang, Nathaniel exercised a strategic genius, a warrior's code, and greater comprehension of time and technology to become a successful despot throughout the multiverse, often coming into conflict with the Avengers and variants of them. Now, Kang's a frequent time traveler, so it should be noted that every instance of time travel or momentous decision made a split in Kang's time stream, creating many variants of him. The non-linear nature of Kang's attacks and the continuing divergence of his history makes it impossible to say for certain how much history each version of Kang shares with the last or next appearance by Kang, or even which Kang out there is the prime. But even death was not the end for Kang. One of his variants developed a cross-temporal body-hopping technology, letting him escape his own body at the moment of death and project his consciousness into a clone duplicate back at his temporal fortress, ensuring his survival. It's kind of like a serial form of immortality. Other Kangs may have developed this technology independently, and indeed, a new divergent copy of the Kang who made this discovery would manifest each time he used the device, and at least one Kang copied the idea for this escape valve by observing this counterpart with the device and reverse engineering the idea. One variant came to Earth in the early 20th century disguised as a man named Victor Timely, a politician, scientist, and businessman who created a Wisconsin town and business after his namesake to influence the development of technology, wanting to master time as something of a long game. So in the modern day, everybody from Reed Richards to Stark Enterprises utilizes some form of timely technology. Some of his variants, the Prime included apparently, came together to form the Council of the Kangs, a trio which was dedicated to eliminating all other Kang's variants throughout the multiverse. They're not to be confused with the Council of Cross-Time Kangs, which was a group of several humans, aliens, and other creatures who took the guise of Kang after defeating the various robots used by Kang to rule multiple realities at the same time. Eventually, longing for the early days of his conquests, the simpler times of ruling a simple kingdom in Egypt rather than the complex cross-time galaxy-spanning empire currently under his thumb, Kang returned to his Pharaoh Rama-Tut identity. He destroyed his time machine in order to cement his decision, and ruled as a kinder, benevolent pharaoh to his people, for he had come to appreciate their value in his absence. Another 10 years passed in Rama-Tut's rule, and his dynasty proved strong. But still fearing that he was fast approaching the time when he would eventually submit to his destiny and become the future Incarnation, Rama-Tut decided to make one last effort to change his fate. However, when all that failed, Rama-Tut was resigned to his fate and was sent on his way to his final destiny. Upon entering the dimension of Limbo, Rama-Tut prepared to begin his retirement. He used robot servitors from his past lives to construct a vast citadel from the substance in Limbo, which changed frequently from the state of the realm itself. Now, frustrated by his own failures to change his own personal timeline, Rama-Tut intended to perform a fuller examination of time and how it worked or how it could be manipulated. He dedicated himself to the eternal pursuit of that study, observing the time stream and all of its different variations from outside of time itself. A future version of Nathaniel created the temporal Goliath known as Tempest and cast him back in time for his future self's incarnation to make use of him. He began using the seemingly indigenous space phantoms of Limbo as laborers and agents as well. Now, the temporal entities known as the Timekeepers, they approached Nathaniel in Limbo and requested his services to ensure their future remained dominant. He agreed, and in exchange, was appointed a custodian of a 7,000 year period in the multiverse for the Timekeepers, molding that era to fit to their specifications. In exchange, he was provided exponentially greater knowledge of the working of time and Limbo. This is when Nathaniel became Immortus, the Lord of Limbo, the Master of Time, and as Immortus, he made plans to ensure that his own destiny came to be. As it turns out, he was responsible for the time storms that in the past seemed to randomly direct the travels of his past selves. Nathaniel Richards, during his first time travel trip, he first arrived in ancient Egypt as he did because of that time storm that Immortus set up. Rama-Tut landing in the modern age to become the Scarlet Centurion, also a result. And finally, overshooting his mark to land in the 40th century to become Kang the Conqueror, also was part of it. He also influenced the Prime Kang in order to form the Council of the Kangs to get rid of all of his variants, and then had the other council members of the Kang killed as well. He wanted to ensure his future becoming Immortus by causing all of these events. and he's known for interfering in the history of the Avengers as well. For further information on Immortus, check out my Timequake video. Again, shameless plug. Nathaniel Richards himself has no superhuman powers. He's just a regular baseline human with genius-level intelligence, a scholarly historian aptitude, and much advanced technology at his disposal. But here's what he can do in each of his incarnations. As the Pharaoh Rama-Tut, he relied mostly on servants and armies rather than personal weaponry. But as a 31st century man, he already had a greater lifespan, immunities, and vitality than a man of similar age from our time, and especially in 3000 BC. For personal weaponry, his sole affectation was his ultra-diode ray, which had a will-sapping effect on his victims. A blast could leave his opponents paralyzed and unable to move, or it could dominate their willpower and force them to act as his slaves. The Scarlet Centurion wasn't active for much long, but mostly he had a personal armor like a prototype version of what he would later use as Kang. His armor had an integrated time travel feature, both for physical time travel and for broadcasting an interactive hologram to a different time period while he remained safe in his fortress. He had subliminal hypnotic devices that could catch an unsuspecting target off guard, making them more open to suggestion and manipulation by the Centurion. It also had more traditional features like a force field, force blasts, ice blasts, electrical blasts, etc. Kang the Conqueror, he wears a suit of neurokinetic armor that responds to his thoughts. It increases his strength level to superhuman, and his personal force field is all but impenetrable, granting him considerable protection from direct assaults. His gauntlets frequently contain concussion blasters or disintegration beams. His time travel circuitry is incorporated into the suit as well, enabling him to travel to various time periods at will, even exiting time altogether to enter Limbo or Chronopolis. Subdimensional access enables him to summon weapons and devices from the armories and laboratories hidden in his various bases throughout time. Kang is capable of storing any number of additional features into his armor if he chooses to. Now, Iron Lad is a teenage variant of Nathaniel Richards. You see, Kang, he was feeling nostalgic and wanted to revisit his boyhood, but he arrived at the wrong point. See, he forgot that he had not been jaded by humanity yet. When his throat was cut by bullies and he spent a year in a hospital, that tarnished his view on humanity forever. So Kang arrived before that point and tried to influence his younger self, who did not like what he saw, and managed to steal the Elder Kang's neurokinetic armor to journey back in time to prevent his fate of becoming Kang. The suit responded to his personal mental engrams, brainwaves, allowing him to control it with his thoughts. It could be reconfigured into different appearances, and he used this to pattern the armor after Iron Man's once he got to the 21st century. It served to amplify his strength and shield him from various kinds of physical injury and attacks. Jets configured in his boots enabled him to fly, and he could also fire ion blasts from his gauntlets or generate a polarized magnetic field to draw metallic objects to him. It also had an onboard computer system capable of storing vast amounts of information, and he could interface with other electronic systems, downloading files from them or forcing them to operate under his control. He also employed holographic projectors built into the hips of his armor, which were commonly used to project the Avengers failsafe program, which he had acquired from the Vision's memory banks. Iron Lad, however, left this armor behind in the present when he returned to the 31st century in order to preserve his future. Now, Immortus, he has absolute control over Limbo, which was granted him by the Timekeepers, and custodianship over a 7,000-year period of space and time throughout the multiverse. He willed a technology beyond the understanding of man, typically controlled mentally or through some other unobservable means. He could travel through time and space, enter specific moments of frozen time, or watch epics pass up close. He could materialize undetected in any era or observe it remotely from Limbo. Immortus' control of time allowed him to perform actions like freezing projectiles in mid-flight or aging matter to dust at will. He had far more advanced forms of hypnotic technology than his previous incarnations, allowing him to remotely influence people in various ways. He could compel simple decisions, guide actions, or obscure reasoning to make people prone to believe a certain set of facts without considering others. Immortus could summon armies of time from various eras, subliminally programming them in transit to fight for him, or command space phantoms to become specific shapes and warriors for his cause. Okay, a few summations and tidbits. The Pharaoh Rama-Tut, he appeared first in Fantastic Four issue number 19, released in November or October of 1963. Then came Kang the Conqueror in Avengers issue number 8 in September of 1964, and 2 months later, in issue number 10, Immortus first appeared. When the Scarlet Centurion was introduced in Avengers Annual number 2, released in September of 1968, it was established by Uatu the Watcher in that very same issue that the Scarlet Centurion, the Pharaoh Rama-Tut, and Kang the Conqueror were all the same individual. Immortus wasn't added to the mix until Giant-Sized Avengers issue number 3, released in February of 1975, during the Celestial Madonna saga. Now, young Kang, the teenage Kang, he became Iron Lad in Young Avengers number 1. Side note, some, but not all, of these incarnations have appeared in the same room together. Also, the character of Immortus, disguised as something of a space phantom named Bender, appeared in the 90s X-Men animated series during the 4-part arc of Beyond Good and Evil, where Apocalypse tries to master time itself. Limbo and Immortus' castle, they also appeared. The former was called the Axis of Time, and both were under the apparent control of Apocalypse. Then Bender, he later revealed himself to be Immortus at the end, and dropped a hint of his identity previously when he referred to himself as a custodian. Keyword. Also, though Nathaniel Richards has been confirmed to be his ancestor, Dr. Doom's role in his ancestry remains debatable. When Nathaniel Richards and Other Earth were introduced in the Fantastic Four issues of the 80s, Kang's history was directly tied into theirs, and in the 90s, during the What If Timequake storyline, Marvel went so far as to reveal Kang's original name was Nathaniel Richards II, cementing the idea that it was Reed Richards' father's time machine that Kang uncovered. Still, even after the revelation of his real name, the debate over whether Richards or Doom was Kang's ancestor still continues, particularly by Kang himself. In all honesty, the Conqueror, it seems that he personally prefers Dr. Doom to be his ancestor, so much so that he ignores or obfuscates proof to the contrary, even in his own memoirs or private diaries. Also, from indications in Loki and from what we saw in Quantumania, there are countless different versions of Kang out there, and they comprise what seems to be the MCU's version of the Cross-Time Council of the Kangs, the governing body of which seems to be the Council of the Kangs, who I won't tell you who they are, but I will say this. It kind of lays dead my theory in my previous video that He Who Remains, the MCU's version of He Who Remains, is a combination of Immortus. We can dead that now, I think. Also, check out these definitions right here, for reference. Okay, Shackhousers, that's what I got for you this week. Again, I'm sorry I took so long to get back to you. Next week, I'm going to be back on my power comparisons again. I took some of your suggestions in the comments in mind, and now you're going to get some fan service from me. And no, not of the Alexandra Daddario type, so get that out of your head, folks. All right, I'll see you then. Later, have a good week. Goodbye.
Mansion, apartment.
Shack, house. Yes!
Yeah.